time. What is the relationship between time and being and knowingness? So let's consider the possibility that time is infinite. And that we have a particular model that we've been taught about the linearity of time. Time is linear. And we live the consequences of what we believe to be real. So just to review, you already know this, that we live as though time is coming from the past, and that the past is becoming the present, and the present is becoming the future, and that most of what's going on in our life has been determined by what came before. And we wonder, is there any free will? And it raises the interesting question of how can change happen? If we just step out of that model for a moment, a lot of what we're talking about, we can use common sense to re-examine our assumptions. So if time comes from the past, into the present, into the future, how could change happen? Where would change come from?
A decision right now.
Huh?
A decision right now.
A decision right now. So then there would be a now that would be different from the past. So then the question is, where does now come from? This isn't a quiz, this is just but these are good questions to inquire. Part of this time-space knowledge by Tarthang Tulku Rinpoche, which is in 6 volumes, part of that whole practice is to inquire. That we inquire into assumptions and questions, like where does now come from? What is now? So, without answers. I'm still arrogant and youthful, despite my appearance. So I would suggest that we work with the idea that time is infinite, and that we play with the idea, remember the infinity sign is an 8 turned on its side? Okay. So let's say that time is infinite. And so what we have is and now is at that crossover. That time, that now is where the past meets the present. That's now. So now is a meeting place. Meeting place. And what we have is we have the future arriving and crossing over where the past is arriving. So we have the now is the meeting place where the future meets the past. Now becomes an important place of decision, or an important place of corrective emotional experience. I think that's what happens in therapy. Is that in the therapeutic now, the past is spoken of in light of another way of seeing or knowing, in the presence of a caring, understanding, compassionate person, which dilutes and transmutes the memory of the past with the future experience, which then becomes the past. And so we're always reworking or rewriting the past in light of an arriving future. We learn to see the past in new light. And the new light can't come from the past. The new light has to come from an arriving future. And so the future is arriving. There is an arriving future, an ever-arriving future. and the ever-arriving future is distilling the memory of the past. And what occurs after the past meets the future distills the past and shapes the future. And so there's an ongoing process of becoming, an ongoing process of being. Earlier on in this setting, I spoke about the future arriving, and we did some practices with facing the future and receiving the future and the ever-arriving future, as though we were positioned on a rock in the stream. And the time was arriving from upstream. And that can be useful. That the clarity, freshness is arriving from upstream, becoming now, and receding into the past, so that the past is ever being recorded, but it's not regurgitating. We've been living as though the past is regurgitating. The corpse of the past is regurgitating into the present and being projected into the future. So if we work with time arriving from the future, look, we made it up. We don't know where the hell time comes from. We don't. But if we're going to make it up, let's make up something that's useful. What do you do about memories? Where do memories come from? So I had to sit with that, because I take your questions seriously. And sitting with that, it became clear that the past is also present. The past is also present. Obviously, this idea that the future is arriving and it's all fresh and it's open is well-intended but naive. The past is also present. So then we get this, that the present is the crossover where an arriving future intersects with the remembered past. And the remembered past then influences and structures the future, which then comes around and dilutes and distills the past. And we get this very organic, dynamic way of being in the now. To consider time that way allows for change. It allows for change without becoming amnesic about the past, because you want to be able to remember how to conjugate verbs, of course. So that's still available. The arriving future is distilling the remembered past. So the past is old. The past is not in this way, in this model, this construct. The past isn't over and done with. We're always creating the past.